What's going on, everyone, and welcome to my brand new channel. It's Hoax Plays here. This channel is going to be dedicated to Halo Infinite and some tips and tricks that I've picked up in the few months the game has been out. My goal here is to point out some things that might be able to help you improve your game, as well as maybe taking a look at my own gameplay and doing a review on that and seeing where I can improve, in hopes that maybe I can shine a spotlight on a few things that maybe you guys are doing in your games with the hopes of helping you out. Now, I'm assuming that you clicked on this video because you are looking to improve in some way. Maybe you're frustrated, maybe you feel like you peaked a little bit, and you feel like there is no way you can get any better. And trust me, I've been there. I've definitely been there. I've been there at least 3-4 times a week. It's super frustrating. You feel like you get into every game and you're just getting stomped on every game. And that's one of the tips we're going to get into eventually about frustration and taking a break. And that can be very beneficial. And I totally get the frustration, like I said. I got high onyx, as you can see here, in both crossplay and solo duo controller. And it felt like there was no way I could improve. But me being the person that I am, I don't accept that. I refuse to accept that. And I think that's what this channel really is going to be about. It's going to be about setting goals, trying to achieve those goals, and trying to improve the best that you can. And I understand everybody plays at different levels, but I think that there are a lot of tips that may be obvious to some people, but that aren't so obvious to other players. And I think that a lot of these things can really help every player, no matter what level you're on, because no matter how obvious they are, sometimes even myself, to be honest, sometimes you know these things, but you get into these games and you just forget about them. And eventually we're going to be getting into playing more consciously and not reacting, rather being more strategic with your gameplay. But today I wanted to focus on free-for-all. Now, I know a lot of players don't particularly play a lot of free-for-all. Me personally, I use it as a way to continue to sharpen my skills while not playing ranked. It's low stakes. You can kind of work on things like crouch spamming, strafing, and shot accuracy. So I think it's a great way to sharpen your skills without jumping into a ranked game and getting stomped every time, especially if you're like me and you've reached a rank that you feel like maybe you've peaked a little bit, so every game you get into is just super frustrating. And I think that 343 is eventually going to add ranked free-for-all. It's not confirmed. I think there's a lot of rumors. But this might be a good video for you to watch if you're just trying to improve in free-for-all in case they eventually do bring ranked free-for-all into the game. But I think too, a lot of these tips are pretty universal across all game modes, no matter what you're playing. But free-for-all is a pretty specific game mode. You don't have help from teammates. You can't rely on them to help you out in certain situations. So the strategy changes quite a bit. But I think if you take some of these tips and utilize them and make them subconscious and kind of muscle memory, then I think a lot of these things can translate really, really well into team-based games and even ranked. So before I get into the first tip, if you guys could smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications, that would be awesome. It really helps out the channel. I'd like to reach as many people as possible. And let me know down in the comments below if you have anything you're struggling with or any ideas for future videos, anything you would like to see. Let me know. I would like to get into ranked at some point. And do you guys play free-for-all? Do you like free-for-all? Do you think they're going to bring ranked free-for-all into the game at all? I think they will. And also hit the like button every time that I say the word free-for-all. Without getting tongue-tied, because it's tough. So here we go. Tip number 1. You have to adjust your play style in free-for-all. Now, this might seem like an obvious one. I'm sure you're thinking, Hoax, of course. Of course you have to adjust your play style for free-for-all. And you would be surprised, but I can't tell you how many players that I run into in some of these public lobbies that are playing the game like it's a team-based game when it's not. So rather than having 4 opponents that may or may not be fighting teammates, you have 5 opponents who could shoot you at any time. And trust me, they will. I'm sure you know. I'm sure you've played a lot of free-for-all matches and you've gotten third-partied quite a bit. And we'll get into that. We'll get into how to mitigate that. But this is why it's so important when you're going into a free-for-all match, or when you switch to free-for-all, that you consciously understand that you need to adjust your play style. Now, one of the strategies that I've found to be most effective in free-for-all is to play a little bit more conservative than you would in a team-based game. And this isn't necessarily camping. It's more so about slowing down and gathering as much information as you can before rushing into a fight and getting third-partied. And you know, if you've played any free-for-all at all, that a lot of players are on the hunt for kills. So as soon as they hear shots, they're going to be rushing towards those shots and hoping to get some people that are red barring or only a couple shots from dying. When you decide to engage in a fight, you need to think one more step ahead after that fight and think, somebody's coming after me. So you need to toss grenades, you need to put yourself in good positions where you can engage in that second fight or even run away. So deciding when and even where to engage in a fight is crucial in free-for-all. And that's really what I mean by adjusting your play style. When you engage in those fights, you won't have teammates to back you up if you get third-partied. And this is why positioning is crucial in free-for-all. It's really important in other game types, but it's especially important for free-for-all. Something that I like to do in my free-for-all games is play the edges. I play the edges of the map as much as I possibly can. That way I can mitigate how many times I'm getting shot in the back or getting third-partied. And it also allows me to get a good look at power weapons and equipment, so I can see when 2 or 3 people are rushing maybe for active camo, I can be in a good position to toss some nades or third-party them even. And I think a great example of this is on the map Recharge. On C platform, you can kind of hide behind that big mechanical device, whatever it is. There is repulsors there and sword hallway. Sword spawns there, obviously. And then you've got a good look at anybody coming from long hallway or control room. And then you can also get in a good position to look down at active camo and see who's rushing that. And you can see here in this clip that I'm playing slow. I'm not doing a whole lot of movement. Some of you might call it camping. But really what I'm trying to do here, especially on this map, is positioning myself in an area where I can mitigate how many times I'm getting third-partied. And C platform on Recharge is a good area. It's an area where there's a high concentration of really useful equipment as well as power weapons and power-ups. And this actually brings me to my second tip. Being able to identify where certain weapons spawn is really important, and it's going to help you win a lot more games. Figuring out where the battle rifle spawns, for instance, or if it's a commando, identifying where the mangler spawns. These are crucial things that you need to keep in mind at the beginning of a match. Now, in unranked, a lot of these weapons may or may not spawn. Sometimes it's a bummer when a battle rifle doesn't spawn or a mangler doesn't spawn, but you kind of just have to adjust and do what you can. Another quick tip here is just check out the kill feed. See what weapons other players are getting kills with. You'll be able to quickly identify if maybe the mangler's spawning or the bulldog shotgun is spawning. And if you play a lot of games, you'll start to understand where these guns typically spawn. You see a mangler in the kill feed on Bazaar, you can bet it's either in the trench or up in palm trees or antenna, and eventually we'll talk about callouts as well. So that's all good information that you can gather in order to win more games. And I can't tell you how many matches I've been in where the shotgun goes untouched or a mangler goes untouched, and that's just a gift to you. Every time you're around those, you should be picking them up, because right now the mangler is overpowered, the shotgun is fantastic, and those are really going to help you get a lot of kills and win a lot of 1v1s that maybe you wouldn't win otherwise. So maybe you've seen this tip before, and for good reason, because it's extremely helpful for a lot of reasons. Sometimes there are days where I just keep getting into tough match after tough match. It feels like maybe my aim isn't where it needs to be. So I hop into bot practice, throw on a few bots depending on what game mode I want to kind of focus on. And I think it's important to go into these bot practice games with a particular goal in mind, and that's kind of going to be a theme in a lot of my videos here, is that you go in thinking, I'm going to practice my aim here, or I'm going to practice my movement. Maybe you feel like you want to test out some new button mapping. And I actually did this recently. I remapped some of my controls, and I went into bot practice, played a few games until it felt like it was sort of ingrained into my memory and I felt confident enough to go into a match-made game. Now obviously practicing your aim, adjusting sensitivity and controls is helpful for every game mode, but for free-for-all in particular, I use bot practice in order to get more familiar with where other players tend to spawn. The more familiar you get with where players are spawning, the easier it's going to become to lock down certain areas like we talked about before. And it's going to be easier to identify when maybe you're going to get third-partied and when you need to maybe run away, find some cover, regen your shields, and then re-engage. And that actually brings me to tip number 4, which is actually an overall tip, but it's really effective in free-for-all, and that is being able to recognize when you are beat and staying alive. Now, a lot of high-level players and pro players call this playing your life. Now, ego challenging other players is a very difficult habit to break, but it's definitely one you need to break if you are hoping to get to the top of the leaderboard every time. And this is something, especially if you watch high-level Onyx players or pro players, they recognize quickly when they're beat, or if somebody has a line of sight on them and they can't break it. If their shields are broken, they dip out of there, reposition, regen shields, and find a better position that they can get into to win the fight. Now, there are a lot of tips that I can give here, and I've broken down some easy ones that you can kind of work on to improve your gameplay, but I did want to leave you guys with one last bonus tip, and this is free-for-all specific. Now, in free-for-all, when you are dead, you can cycle through every other player who is still alive. Now, what I like to do is when I die, I cycle through all the players, figure out where they're heading, what location they're in, kind of mentally or sometimes even out loud, say where they are on the map. That way, when I spawn, if somebody's near me, then I know they're there, or maybe they're kind of close, or they have a power weapon. I can't tell you how many times this has saved my life right off of the spawn. And because I'm really familiar with the maps and the callouts and everything, I can kind of log that information kind of fast because I've practiced it. And I think the more you practice doing that when you die, the more free-for-all games you will win. So, like I said, there's a ton we can talk about, not just in Halo Infinite, but in Halo Infinite Free-for-All. And I think if you were to try and practice some of these tips, then you will find yourself at the top of the leaderboard in Free-for-All more often than not. So here are some of my stats. I had a pretty good run yesterday. I believe I went 20-5. And a lot of the tips that I talked about in this video are things that I have been working on for quite some time. So that's going to do it for today's video. But definitely let me know down in the comments if these tips were helpful or if you feel like I missed something. I feel like there's going to be a part 2 to this. There's just a lot to break down for free-for-all, as well as all the other game modes that Halo Infinite has to offer. And eventually I'd like to get into analyzing some of my own gameplay and breaking it down and figuring out what I did right, maybe what I did wrong, and if that's something you guys would like to see, let me know for sure. And I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/aclassichoax. Come hang out. I'm recording most days, so anytime you pop in, there's a good chance that I'm on. And as always, please remember to subscribe. It's free. Join the community. I'd love to have you guys. And turn on notifications if this was helpful. Alright, let's set goals and achieve them. Have a great day. And thanks for watching.